John Connolly is a writer best known for his series of crime novels, generally set right here in Maine, featuring a private detective named Charlie Parker. Connolly grew up in Ireland and spends most of his time there, but he's been coming to Maine for years and owns a home in Portland.
His latest book is a Parker novel called The Furies. This was a project John Connolly started writing early in the pandemic when people were locked down. His idea was to tell the story in small bites, delivered to readers in a most unusual way.
And I thought it might be interesting to write something that they could read on their phones, because I don't know about you, I can read about 400 words on a phone, and then I kind of begin flicking.
So your idea was that you would give people just little bits of the story, how frequently? Every day?
5 days a week. But yeah, it was essentially the idea that it would be something short, little installments, and I would have to live with every mistake I'd made.
You didn't have the usual luxury of putting it aside, going back and looking at it days or weeks later and then revising. You just wrote it and sent it out to the world.
Yeah, and so people could see what an idiot I was. Yeah, so 400 to 600 words a time. And then when I finished it, I thought, well, at least I have a book. But actually, it didn't work outside of that little phone screen. They were too short and there was no rhythm, so the whole thing had to be disassembled and rejigged and put together again. So it's twice the length it was, and it's a very different beast. But it was an interesting experiment, and I think to let people see underneath the bonnet, as it were.
What kind of a response did you get from readers to sending them these daily stories?
People were lovely about it. People were looking for a distraction, and it was nice that, we weren't gouging them for money. You got it for free. It was just something that the author was giving you.
The name of the book is The Furies. In Greek mythology, who were the Furies?
The Furies were female spirits, essentially, that avenged unpunished crimes. And so the two novels in the book are interconnected. They're really about men underestimating women, underestimating the potency and the cleverness of women.
Did you find in writing the book, in being in lockdown yourself, that helped the creative process, or did it make it more difficult?
I never had so much time without distraction to immerse myself in things. I ended up writing The Furies. I ended up finishing another novel, writing a script for a film of the Book of Lost Things, starting the sequel to that novel, and then I wrote a history of genre fiction. I suddenly had all of this time.
Man, you're
that I
putting
didn't have
the
before.
rest of us to shame.
Yeah, what did you do, Caldwell, during lockdown? Yeah. Did you learn how to cook? Did you make muffins?
You divide your time between Ireland and Maine, more time in Ireland, certainly. But because of the pandemic, you have spent really minimal time in Maine.
Yeah.
How did that affect your writing a story that is set in Maine?
The geography of the city didn't change. There's still the places that I know.
But you've got to be careful that some bar that you loved didn't close during the pandemic.
Things just turn over so quickly. Yes, there was an element of checking those things. I found it difficult. I love coming over here. It's become very much part of my life, and to have been cut off from it for essentially 3 years. I think I've been over here for 3 days in 3 years. Was quite difficult for me. It really has become a kind of second home.
In writing the book, you wanted to make sure that you captured the feel of Portland during the pandemic, and for that you turned to a mutual friend of ours, Gordon Walsh, who works in our production department at the TV station, whom I have worked with for more than 30 years, who's a good friend of yours, and you had him look at the manuscript.
Yeah, which I've very rare. I hardly ever do that. But yeah, Gordon was very good about looking at it, because he had lived through everything, obviously, and he picked up one or two things that he said, actually, I remember that slightly differently, or I remember that day as being slightly different. Because it's really important to get those things right. The last thing you want is somebody here picking up the book and being pulled out of it by going, that's not right.
Did you take up any new hobbies during the pandemic? Did you learn to cook? Did you make muffins?
That sounds very accusatory. I'm not sure I like your tone.
It is a bit, yes.
Obviously, I struck a chord there
sure
earlier.
did.
Yeah. Did I touch a nerve, Rob? Learning Spanish. That was one thing, because I do a certain amount of promotion, but also I hear that learning a language staves off dementia and things like this, which seems like a really good idea. These are the things you start thinking about in your 50s. How am I going to stave off dementia, I'm going to be able to remember where I left my keys. So that was the big thing for me. And also partly, and I think perhaps like a lot of people, that reconsideration some of us had of how we've been living our lives. I spent a lot of time away from home. I was promoting books and I felt I had to do it. And it's a bit like when you're banging your head against a wall. When you stop traveling, you suddenly realize, well, why was I? It's not, traveling wasn't much fun before COVID, and certainly wasn't any fun during it. So the idea of spending more time at home, maybe more time with the kids, more time with the dogs, those little things, because yeah, you know, we were all cloistered together, and I kind of went, you know, I actually quite like these people.
What did you learn during the pandemic, Sam?
Let's see, that I enjoy being around people a lot more than being alone. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. But you didn't bake muffins?
I know, no muffins. But hey, when you do that, make sure you share the recipe.
Again, the name of John Connolly's new novel is The Furies.
We have more information about him and the book in the 207 section of newscentermaine.com.